Hey guys, good morning. We are on lesson 13 for Wit and Wisdom. Our essential question is, what can we discover about animals' unique features? Our focus question is, how did Jane Goodall make discoveries about animals? And our content framing is, what is the essential meaning of me, Jane? So in this lesson, we are going to interpret the essential meaning of me, Jane, by first reviewing the main topics and key details from the text and looking beyond that to consider the larger lesson that can be learned from this story. So let's get started with our fluency. So I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, so you should have been practicing this every night, working on that fluency, building up the speed, pausing at your punctuation, and reading the way you talk. Me, Jane by Patrick McDonnell. And Jane loved to be outside. She watched birds making their nest, spiders spinning their webs, and squirrels chasing one another up and down trees. Great job. Okay. Make sure to continue practicing that story. So let's talk a minute about fables. We identified some fables back in earlier lessons. And we know that fables teach lessons, and lessons are things that we learn from things, right? So think about some of the lessons that we've learned in the ants and the grasshopper and the hare and the tortoise and the 7 blind mice. Well, could we say to pay attention to the whole thing and not just the parts? And what about keep going, don't give up? And what about work first, play later? Now remember, lessons are big ideas that we remember after we're done reading a text. And after we read a text closely, we can think about and discover these important messages. So another name for this important message is called the essential meaning. And the essential meaning is the important message that the author wants us to learn after reading a text. So let's look at our main topic and key details chart from lesson 11. Okay, so let me bring this in. Okay. Okay, I've got to make it bigger enough so you guys can see it. Okay, this is the Me, Jane main topics chart, and it's got the pages that they're located on and the main topic. So we're going to review this to see if we can remember what the text was mostly about, and maybe help us figure out the essential meaning of this text. So let's look at this. Pages 4 through 7, the main topic was Jane did many things to learn about animals. And we know what she did because she watched animals, she observed animals, and she studied them, didn't she? On 10 through 15, she was curious. Remember, she went in and watched Grandma Nut in the chicken coop lay an egg. She was curious about that. On 16 through 23, Jane felt like part of the world. Remember, she would sit in her backyard and just dream about being part of the world and going out and working with animals. On 24 through 35, her dream of working with animals in Africa came true. So all of her hard work and dedication came true. So this book was about Jane Goodall's life, but what can we learn from Jane Goodall's life to use in our own lives? Maybe to discover new things. Don't give up on dreams. Be curious about things and wonder. Absolutely. So the essential meaning or important message that the author wants us to learn from this reading this text is dreams can come true. Be curious about nature and you're going to learn a lot. Always discover new things and your dreams can come true if you're curious about the world. So what I'd like to look at now is another chart. Let me read out here. Okay. This is our essential meaning chart. Okay. And what this is going to do is we are going to read the story aloud and we are going to look for evidence to support this essential meaning of me, Jane. Now, if you notice, the essential meaning there is being curious and discovering new things can help your dreams come true one day. So what I want us to do is every time you hear evidence for that, I want you to stand up, okay? So let me get the text here and I will read it to you. Back it up because you don't want to be that up close and personal. Okay. So, Me, Jane by Patrick McDonnell. Now remember, when you hear evidence about her being curious and discovering new things, make sure you stand up. Jane had a stuffed toy chimpanzee named Jubilee. She cherished Jubilee and took him everywhere she went. Jane loved to be outside. Remember, we talked about cherished, and cherished means loved. She watched birds make their nest, spiders spinning their webs, and squirrels chasing one another up and down trees. Now, did you see me stand up? Why did I stand up? Because there was evidence. What was the evidence? Jane was curious about animals. Awesome. You know what? Let's put that up there on our board. She was curious about animals. Okay. Let's keep reading, see if we hear more. Jane learned all that she could about animals and plants. She studied in her backyard and read in books. Did you see me stand up again? Because what was she doing? She was learning things about the animals. Awesome. Let's go ahead and put She's discovering new things. Great. Let's keep on. And here's her drawings. One day, curious Jane wondered where eggs came from, so she and Jubilee snuck into Grandma Nut's chicken coop. Does that tell we're curious also? It does, so you should have stood up on that one, huh? Hid behind some straw and stayed very still. And observed the miracle. It was a magical world full of joy and wonder, and Jane felt very much part of it. Jane often climbed her favorite tree, which she named Beech. She would lay her cheek against its trunk and seem to feel the sap flowing beneath the bark. Jane could feel her own heart beating, beating, beating. With the wind in her hair, she read and reread the books about Tarzan of the Apes, in which another girl named Jane lived in the jungles of Africa. Did you stand there? Because what did she do? She read and reread books, didn't she? So that made her curious about things. Jane dreamed of a life in Africa too. So what did she do there? She dreamed, didn't she? So you should be standing on that one also. A life living with and helping all animals. Is that what she wanted to do? Mm-hmm. So you could be standing on that too. At night, Jane would tuck Jubilee into bed and say her prayers. And fall asleep. And awake one day. Could you be standing here? You sure could, because she was dreaming. That dream came true. So you could be standing on that one also. The end. So let's look at what we have up here. We have our essential meaning of Jane so far. We know that Jane was curious about animals and nature. We know she discovered new things about nature. We also know that she had a dream. She had a dream. And we also know her dream came true. Her dream came true. Good. So the essential meaning of her being curious and discovering new things can help your dreams come true. We broke it down because she's curious about animals and nature. She discovered new things. She had a dream and then her dream came true. Great job. Now, what I want us to look at, let's look at our lesson anchor chart for a moment. I know we've got a lot of charts today, and I apologize for that. It's because our video's not working today. So you get the joy of Miss Nicholson making all your charts today. So let's look at this chart here. Let me bring it in a little closer. All right, and I'll scoot out of the picture there for a moment so you can see it. Notice it's got title, lesson, and lessons from the text. So this lesson anchor chart tells us the story that we've read and the lesson and what we get from the lesson. So the ants and the grasshopper, the lesson from that is to plan ahead and work hard. Think about that grasshopper. What was he doing? He was playing, wasn't he? He was playing his fiddle. He didn't plan ahead, did he? Nope, he sure did not. So that lesson from that text would be a time for work and a time for play. So if you get all your work done, then you can go play. You don't want to play first because then you're going to run out of time for work and then you're going to get in trouble. Hare and tortoise, the lesson from that, even if you're slow, keep going. You can win that race. Don't give up, okay? And the lesson from the text is the race is not always to the swiftest. Think about it. The hare laid down and took a nap because he thought, it'll be okay. That tortoise isn't going to get here anytime soon. Well, he didn't wake up. And who crossed the finish line first? The tortoise, because he didn't stop. He kept going. 7 blind mice. The lesson is knowing all the parts will help you find out the whole. Remember, all those mice would run and touch one part of the elephant and they couldn't figure it out. But then the white mouse, he put all the parts together and he found out what the whole was. So the lesson from the text is knowing in part may make a fine tale, but wisdom comes from seeing the whole picture. So now let's look at Me, Jane. The lesson from this is being curious and discovering new things can help your dreams come true. So was she curious? Yes. And did she discover new things? Yes. And that helped her dreams come true, didn't it? So what about the lesson from the text? What could we learn from this? That not to give up. Your dreams will come true. That would be a great lesson from the text, wouldn't it? So instead of having NA there, you could put, don't give up on your dreams, right? Absolutely. So we are done with our anchor chart. Let's go into spelling for a moment, phonetic spelling. Let me back it up a minute. All right, phonetic spelling. How does phonetic spelling work? So what can you do if you want to write a word and you don't know how to spell it? Well, I always tell my boys and girls, use the word wall, use things in the room, or spell it the best you can, sound it out. What do you hear? And write that letter down, okay? And you know what? That's a great way to get started. So remember, when you're trying to spell a word, say the word, say it slowly, and count the sounds you hear. Remember, we've been blending and segmenting. Use that to help you spell words. And also write lines for the segments, like act. You'd write 3 lines and put the k for the C, a for the A, and t for the T, and they would sit on the lines. And then say the word again. That's going to help you out tremendously when you're writing words. So let's see here. It is now time for us to do our informative paragraph. We started this in our last lesson, remember? Okay, and we came up with a sentence. So let me get that again. Okay, this was our topic sentence. Oops. Might help if I move it up so you can see it. This was our topic sentence from our last lesson, okay? Jane Goodall made discoveries about animals, and you wrote that in your journal. Well, today we're going to use this topic sentence and create an informative writing to be turned in for a grade. I know together, but I still want you to turn it in, okay? You do not have a sheet to write it on, so you will rewrite it in your journal and take a picture and send it in, okay? Now remember the steps to an informative paragraph. Let's look at this. Our informative paragraph, remember, starts with a topic sentence. We have that down. Next, we have to come up with facts and details. Remember, facts and details are the juicy things in this burger. We want at least 2 facts or details written down. And then we have a conclusion where we tie in all of this. We restate our topic sentence for our conclusion. Okay, so we have our topic sentence. Now we need to work on facts and details. Okay, so let me take this off. So you're asking, where do I get the facts and details? Well, I've got your answer. We're going to use this chart here to help us get some details. We're going to use this chart here to get details from. This chart is how did Jane make discoveries about animals? This is where we're going to find out things that we need to put in our story. So what did Jane discover about animals? Birds make nests, spiders spin webs, squirrels chase each other up and down trees. How did she discover that information? She watched the animals making nests, spinning webs, chasing each other up and down trees. So do you think that would be a great fact or a detail to our story? It certainly would. The next one, learned about plants and animals in her backyard. How did Jane discover that? She studied and read books. So would this be a great fact or detail to put in our story? Yes, because she studied and read books about plants and animals in her backyard. That's an awesome one. Then we have another thing that Jane did. She discovered chickens laying eggs. How did she do this? She observed and was still. She observed and she was still watching those chickens lay those eggs. Is that another fact and detail that we can use? Yes, it is. So we have 3 facts and details right here that we could use in our story. So I'm going to bring the story back over here to the front side. And let's think about, how did Jane Goodall make discoveries about animals? What did she do? we could put Jane watched. So I'm going to put Jane watched. What did she watch? The animals in her backyard, didn't she? She watched, I'll make it more specific. She watched birds making nest and spiders spinning webs. Okay, so that's one thought. What's another fact that we could put on here? That she observed chickens laying eggs? Yes. Jane observed chickens laying eggs. So, do we have two details now about our story? We do. We sure do. So, what else do we need for our story? We need a conclusion. So, think about what could our conclusion say? What could we put? What about Jane Goodall learned about animals? Now, does that sentence go back and restate this topic sentence? Let's look. Jane Goodall made discoveries about animals. Jane Goodall learned about animals. It does. It restates it. So let's read our story now. Jane Goodall made discoveries about animals. Jane watched birds making nests and spiders spinning webs. Jane observed chickens laying eggs. Jane Goodall learned about animals. So we have a topic sentence. Our first sentence, Jane Goodall made discoveries about animals. We have two facts or details. Jane watched birds making nests and spiders spinning webs. That's one. Jane observed chickens laying eggs. That's two. And then now we need our conclusion, which is Jane Goodall learned about animals. So we have everything we need to make an informative paragraph, correct? Yes, we do. All right, guys, make sure that you have written that all down and that you take a picture of it and turn it in to me. Make sure your name is on that also, please, okay? So that is the end of our lesson today. Make sure you get that completed and turned in. Thanks, guys.